in the realm of audio production, whether that's recording, whether that's mixing, or whether that's producing, it seems like there's an infinite amount of money that you could spend on just what it takes to do what you do. I think if you gave an audio engineer or somebody who works in audio production a budget of $1 million, they would be able to spend it in a day. I know for me personally, if somebody gave me $1 million and said, you can spend this on anything as long as it's related to your work, as long as it's related to what you do in music, I could spend that like instantly. So the problem that we have is, as freelancers, or if you want to see it as running your own business is expensive no matter what you're doing. Coffee carts, whatever it is, like smoothie stands, all of that, they're going to have their own expenses, whether it's just your inventory, the fees and the licensing you need to be on public property. Any business is going to have expenses, right? But what I believe is that audio engineering or audio production is particularly expensive. Or at least what I want to kind of highlight in this video is, I think that we've been marketed to think that it has to be very expensive when it doesn't actually have to be. My goal in the video is to try and shift your mindset a little bit and to try and expose some actual just lies that I think most of us probably believe about what we need for audio production. So just for example, why I say that I think audio engineering in particular is very expensive in comparison to some other businesses. Speakers can be tens of thousands of dollars. Microphones, again, tens of thousands of dollars. Outboard gear, tens of thousands of dollars. And consoles in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these are just the tools that we know of in the trade, and any one of them can be like 15K. So how do you even get into this? If you want to use the good stuff, if you want to make quality music, if you want to be professional, it just kind of seems like that's what you need, because that's what the pros that are put on camera and the pros whose names we know, that's what they all use, right? That's what we are marketed to think. But here is the thing. Of course, we think that that's what we need, because the companies that make $10,000 speakers are pouring into marketing and are doing brand deals with engineers. Like, that's their goal, literally, with making that product, is to get people to think that they need it. So they've succeeded in the marketing. But the truth is, you don't need the $10,000 speakers. That shouldn't even be your goal. In order to set a proper goal, you need to kind of balance the one side of your mind that is thinking as an audio engineer, that's thinking about like all the dope things in the dope studio you want to build. And then the other side where it's like, okay, I'm running a business. I'm a freelancer. I am trying to make a living off of this. I'm trying to pay my bills with this. You need to balance both of those and find that middle ground. I need to reach a place where I'm not pouring every dollar I make back into this business forever. Because, like I said, if you can spend $1 million in a day just on this, if you make $1 million over your career just from this, and it all goes back into this, you've made nothing. So we need to stop ourselves from the trajectory that we're naturally on as people in audio production. The natural trajectory is, okay, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of gear that I have to buy, there's a lot of money that I have to spend. We need to stop ourselves from that path that I think we're all naturally on. So here's what the goal should be, that I believe is the middle ground, from the business owner, freelancer, to the audio production guy who loves music, loves making music, wants to build a dope studio. I think you need to prioritize your niche and create a minimal setup. All right, so here's what I mean by that. When I say audio production, I'm talking about people who do recording, people who produce, and people who mix. And maybe you can throw mastering in there. I feel like mastering is its whole other beast and animal. If you're like really going to specialize in mastering, I feel like that's a whole new set of things. But let's just say it's recording, producing, and mixing. What I would highly recommend doing, here's how I think you can have the lowest expenses possible. I would write down on paper in order which one matters most to you and what you do the most work in. So I'll just use myself as an example. I do the most mixing and I care the most about mixing. I do a lot of production and I do some recording. So based on which order you choose for those three things, different elements of a studio are going to gain or lose priority. So, for example, if you're mainly doing mixing and production, your interface does not matter as much as it would to somebody who's recording is their number one. If you're mainly a producer and you always send it to somebody else to mix and master your stuff, your room choice, treatment, and speaker choice is really not going to matter as much as it would for somebody who is mixing. I think there's still great benefits to being able to trust what you're hearing as a producer. It'll definitely change your workflow, but it's just not as high on the priority list. The most important thing for a mixer is going to be this isn't even something that costs money, but where you put your speakers and your room and the treatment and your speaker calibration. That is the most important thing, I think, for a mixer is just what you're hearing is actually what's inside the computer. It's accurate. You can trust your speaker system. Producing is interesting. I think producing has the widest range. I think it really depends on who you are as a producer, what kind of music you make, how you work. That's really just on you to know what you actually need to make the music that you want to make. But I would say still be smart about where you put your speakers, and it'd be great if you can get accurate low end, because I know for me, once I started hearing things accurately, I'm no longer layering so many kick samples. I can just choose the one and actually realize that there was low end there in the first place. And then if your main priority is recording, I would say that's probably the most expensive specialty just because of preamps and IO that can just add up. But there are smart ways to do it. I think that knowing these couple of things are probably going to keep you from making dumb purchases. The first thing is that the goal of a good converter, A to D, D to A, is to be transparent. There's not really a good sounding converter. That's not really a thing because the goal of a converter is to be transparent. The goal of a converter is for it to be invisible. You don't want to hear a converter. So the thing is, most interfaces that are I would just say above that like $500, $600 range are going to have great converters, really transparent converters where you're not going to be able to hear them. So if you were to get an interface with like 4 ends and then ADAT, another like Focusrite that maybe has like 6 or 8 pre's, you'll probably be really good with just that. And that's way less expensive than going out and buying like so many pre's and all of that. It just adds up. So there's definitely cheaper ways to do it. You just have to be aware of all the ways that audio companies try and sell themselves to you. Another thing to be aware of that's going to save you a lot of money, I would watch videos by AP Mastering on just demystifying compressor and EQ plugins. I've been more and more convinced by him and Jeff Ellis that different EQ plugins and different compressors don't have a magical tone that are going to add that mojo to the vocal. That's not a thing. The real difference, it seems, between EQ plugins and compressor plugins are kind of the presets, if you will. The curves that are in the EQ or the attack and release times that are in the compressor. And there's much more to it. But I think that's the real difference that you'll get between plugins. But don't go out there getting like 5 different kinds of 1176 plugins. It's just, that's pointless and you're spending more money than you're making probably on that. Another quick thing that I think could save you thousands if you actually do this, if you're a mixer, just commit to being in the box. Not only is this better from a workflow perspective, you don't need to recall gear. It takes way less time to recall your sessions. It takes way less time to print stuff. The plugins are like so on point now that there's like such little difference. It's really hard to justify the thousands of dollars that are in between the plugin and the actual gear. You can put like unlimited plugins in your session versus having the one compressor outboard gear. Like, just mix in the box. You're really not losing anything by doing that. So many mixers, so many pros, like legends, are mixing fully in the box. So if they can do it, you definitely can do it. And I would say you should do it just from a workflow perspective. So those are just a couple like small things that could save you money. But once you have your order of, all right, this is what I want to specialize in, this is what's important, this is what's not as important, build your studio in your mind. Plan it out like plan it out in as much detail as you can. Realize what is and isn't as important to you and what you're doing. Based off of that, buy used gear from Reverb. Look on Facebook Marketplace. Everything that you choose needs to be driven by necessity. That's my big philosophy here, is that it needs to be driven by absolute necessity. You have to be content. Like, that's why I say your goal shouldn't be to get that $30,000 Fairchild compressor. Your goal shouldn't be to have the however tens of thousands of dollars ATCs. You don't need those to make great music. You don't need those to trust what you're hearing. Even if you're a mixer and it's really important that you can trust what you hear, you do not need $10,000 speakers. I'll take Jeff Ellis as an example. He's somebody that has said that he's literally gone from like $10,000 speakers to his Kali Audios, which are $500 per speaker. So you just don't need the crazy expensive stuff. So your goal is to build a studio that has only what you need. And here's probably the biggest thing that I can say. Once you've gotten there, once you've built that dream studio that was in your budget, that was realistic for you, stay there. Don't think about continually upgrading for the rest of your life. Because I think that's our mindset that we just have, is like, I want to keep on upgrading, and then like once I'm working on like big records, then I'll go all out and get all the big stuff. I would say if you're thinking that way, you'll probably have a really hard time keeping the money that you're making on music, because it's just going right back into your business. Like, you can minimize your costs and then get to a point where, all right, this isn't actually costing me much at all to run. I don't have to keep on buying new gear. I love new gear. It's cool to get new toys. But if you don't need to constantly be upgrading and stuff like that, it's like, all right, I have the speakers that I chose. They're great. They're not holding me back. I can trust what I'm hearing. Stay there and don't think about moving on. There's so much more to be said about what the different studios should and could look like between disciplines. I'll just use myself as an example and take a lolook at this studio right here. Like I said before, it's mixing, producing, recording. So for mixing, I just ordered the Kali Audio Ion 8 V2s, and that's going to replace these Adam Audio T5V speakers. So once I get the Ion 8s, I'm thinking about those as if I'm like never gonna upgrade from them. That's the goal, is to get the stuff that you'll never need to upgrade from. I'll probably stick with those as long as I can, whether that's decades, whether that's the rest of my life. Once I get those, my mixing studio is finished. I could get more treatment. One thing I forgot to say, I'm editing the video right now. Don't let perfect be the enemy of great, because I'm saying great instead of good for a reason, because the goal studio, the studio you should aim to build is going to be a great studio. You're not looking at getting like a $80 Behringer interface. Just because you're trying to be more affordable doesn't mean you're getting the cheapest thing. It means you're getting a great thing that's just not the most expensive thing. That's my point. Like, just because, you know, I don't have a fully treated room doesn't mean that this treatment isn't a huge help. So that's just one more thing I want to add. So once the mixing part of the studio is complete and that's totally optimized, then I'll move on to starting to focus on some production stuff, making sure that I have everything that I absolutely need to make the music that I want to make. And then maybe I'll be like, all right, I'll get a nice mic for the couple of vocal sessions that I do every now and then. But that's kind of how I'm approaching it. And I really just think that we need to get that mindset in of like, once you got it, you're good. Don't think about incurring more expenses because it'll be too easy to just pour everything that you make back into the business. So I hope my 2 cents helped. I hope this approach works for you guys if you're going to do it. And I hope that this saves you guys a lot of money. That's my main hope. I'm just a person, so I'm sure there's stuff I said in here that other people who are further along than me would disagree with. And that's totally cool. But this makes total sense to me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.